Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ here. Welcome to the program. Now on tonight's headlines.
Europe scrambles to contain a new variant of the coronavirus spreading across the UK as a raft of bans on travel to Britain. So chaos ahead of the holidays.
Thailand begins COVID testing after the biggest ever surge in cases linked to an outbreak at its biggest seafood market. We have our EBC correspondent, Cristel Mapa, standing by for that report.
There has been reports of weak to light.
And the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island erupted late Sunday, warning of a possible significant emission of volcanic ash into the atmosphere. Our EBC correspondent, Alfred Asenas, will give us an update.
And two of the solar system's biggest planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are set to come within planetary kissing distance in the evening sky. A phenomenon will not occur until 2018.
In Europe, several countries, including Italy, Spain, France, Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, have halted flights and trains in the United Kingdom. The new restrictions are to prevent the spread of a new coronavirus strain that is sweeping across parts of England. And it appears to spread more easily, but it's not believed to be more dangerous. Let's listen in.
This mutation differs from the previous versions of the virus because it's accumulated some mutations, some of which will change the spike protein, which is considered to be the most important part of the virus for binding to our own cells when it causes an infection. There are other mutations as well, but these are thought to be the most important ones and the ones that are perhaps responsible for the change in transmissibility. So you could end up in a situation, and I emphasize it's a could, not a will, where you get a less pathogenic, less potent virus that infects more people. So it's therefore going to place an even greater burden on the healthcare system, on our hospitals. That's where the problem lies. It's the balance between the two. So while it's good that it's no more pathogenic, it's not necessarily a signal that there's nothing to worry about. If we look at the changes that those mutations make to the spike protein, which is the target for the vaccine, then we don't think they're sufficient enough to change the effectiveness of the vaccine. We don't think they're radical enough to change the biochemistry and the structure of the spike protein.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson called the COBR or COBR Emergencies Committee meeting to discuss the situation regarding international travel, in particular the steady flow of freight into and out of the UK, according to a spokesman. Now, Prime Minister Johnson said the infectiousness of the new strain had forced him into locking down much of England over the holiday period. More than a dozen European nations have already banned flights and travelers from Britain, with more expected to take action. Health authorities in Britain's former colonial territory, Hong Kong, said UK flights would also be banned from Tuesday. Crucial transit country France moved to block people and goods crossing the channel, while the Netherlands said passengers arriving by ferry would be denied entry. The ban on all but unaccompanied freight crossing to France comes as companies scramble to shift merchandise with days to go until Britain finally quits the EU trade structures in the wake of Brexit.
More on that development, the UK imposed a fresh lockdown across London and surrounding areas of England to combat a new strain of COVID-19 that appears to be significantly more contagious than earlier variants of the pathogen. The tougher restrictions mean many families won't be allowed to gather for the holidays. We have Erica Celestino joining us live. Erica, give us more.
Good evening, CJ. Yes, so Britain's health minister warned on Sunday that a strict lockdown imposed on London and southeast England may last for months because a new strain of the coronavirus was out of control. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced on Saturday that millions must cancel Christmas plans and stay at home from Sunday morning because the new strain was spreading far more quickly. Health Secretary Matt Hancock warned that the strict measures that affect almost a third of England's population could stay in place until the virus vaccine is fully rolled out. We acted very quickly and decisively, Hancock told Sky News, justifying the stay-at-home order, ban on family gatherings over holidays, and closure of non-essential shops. Around 16.4 million people entered the strictest Tier 4 measures from Sunday, or 31% of England's population. They are not allowed to hold family gatherings, while in the rest of the country, a limited number of households are allowed to mix on Christmas Day only, rather than the 5 days originally proposed. Hancock said the situation was deadly serious. The UK hopes to reach a figure of 500,000 vaccinations over the weekend, the health minister said. London's Metropolitan Police said it would take action against those who make reckless decisions that risk lives. Other UK regions also tightened their anti-virus measures in response. Wales introduced a strict lockdown from Sunday, while Scotland banned travel to and from other UK regions for Christmas and announced it will double its police presence along the English border. Both Scotland and Northern Ireland are to enter fresh lockdowns on December 26. Northern Ireland was to introduce additional measures on Sunday. Scientists first discovered the new variant in a patient in September, Susan Hopkins of Public Health England told Sky News. She said that scientists in November found the new strain was behind a cluster of cases in Kent, which spread into London and Essex and informed the government on December 11. Public Health England then again notified the government on Friday when modeling revealed the full seriousness of the new strains, she said. She confirmed the figure given by Johnson that the new virus strain could be 70% more transmissible, while saying this was an initial figure. I think 70% looks like a good number to land on at the moment, she said. The virus has been found in all regions of England, but in small numbers, Hopkins said. Hancock said cases had also been identified in Australia and Europe. Patrick Ballance, the government's chief scientific advisor, said on Saturday that the new strain contained 23 differences, including to the way the virus binds to human cells and enters cells. Simon Clark, associate professor in cellular microbiology at the University of Reading, told AFP that the mutations affect the spike protein that studs the virus and is targeted by vaccines. If we look at the changes that those mutations make to the spike protein, which is target for the vaccine, then we don't think they are sufficient enough to change the effectiveness of the vaccine, he said. Also, CJ London Mayor Sadiq Khan told Sky News that London now has the same number of hospital patients with the virus as during the peak of the first wave in April. Cases have also grown rapidly among those aged 10 to 19, he said. Back to you, CJ.
Erica, what does Tier 4 mean for an ordinary man on the street?
So, CJ, this tier is the strictest. Earlier, the system was a 3-tier system, and they suddenly added this Tier 4, which has more restrictions. People have to stay at home if they live in a Tier 4 area. They must not leave their home except for reasonable excuses, such as working or essential activities like doing groceries, buying medicine, and if they have to fulfill legal obligations, and also for education and childcare purposes. But more detailed information are found on gov.uk, which is the government's website. And this Tier 4 also means that this is a major disruption to the festive plans of many people here who were really looking forward to spending time with families outside their bubble during this holiday, but all that is canceled now.
Yeah, you mentioned about time with families. I mean, this new lockdown is a new development. So how is that affecting travel plans there in UK Southeast area?
So CJ, countries around the world have begun banning flights and travelers from Britain as the spread of a more infectious new coronavirus strain was now out of control. Some of the countries are Germany, who halted air links with the UK from midnight, with the ban initially set to last until the 31st of December. But cargo flights will be exempted. Also, another country is France, who banned travel from Britain for 48 hours, including anyone transporting goods by road, air, sea, or rail. There's the Netherlands as well, who banned flights from the UK until the 1st of January. One case of the new strain was actually found in the country. And also in Italy, Italy blocked flights from Great Britain and prohibits entry into Italy of people who have stayed in the UK during the last 14 days. Anyone in Italy who recently traveled from Britain must be tested. And the new strain has been found in one person in Italy who recently returned from the UK. Another country is Ireland, who halted flights from Britain for at least 48 hours. Then there's Canada also, who halted the flights from UK for 72 hours. And another one is Hong Kong, which is the former British colony. It's banning all flights arriving from the United Kingdom from midnight. And the quarantine of passengers who arrived from Britain in the last fortnight is being extended, CJ.
Well, thank you so much, Erica. I'm sure it's going to be a very challenging next few days for everyone there, especially in areas who are affected by this new lockdown. Well, please do stay safe out there and give us more updates on the development on this news. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, CJ. Stay safe as well. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Erica Celestino. We live in interesting times.
In a related news, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases will be discussing efforts to prevent the entry of a new strain of coronavirus emerging in the United Kingdom, according to Malacanang. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this remark after more nations have started imposing travel bans on the UK after it reported a more infectious coronavirus variant. Take a look.
Pag-uusapan pa po yan sa IATF, no? Pero sa ngayon po, in place pa naman yung ating mga protocols para sa lahat ng pumapasok ng Pilipinas. Kasama po yan yung mandatory quarantine habang inaantay po ang resulta ng kanilang PCR tests.
Opo. England's Chief Medical Officer Professor Chris Whitty warned that a newly identified variant of COVID-19 can be up to 70% more transmissible than the earlier, more dominant type of virus. He also said the new variant is responsible for 60% of infections in London, which have nearly doubled in the last week, CNN reported. A series of stricter coronavirus restrictions are now being imposed over the holiday season in the UK as the cases get, quote, out of control.
More on the lockdowns. Hong Kong says it will ban all flights from Britain following the discovery of a new and highly infectious strain of the coronavirus there, now the first in Asia. Let's listen in.
Response to the new virus strain that we have immediately adopted some stringent new measures. And that include stopping people who have stayed for over 2 hours in the UK to board the flight to Hong Kong. So essentially, there will be no flights with passengers coming to Hong Kong starting midnight tonight. And effectively, that is, banning all flights with passengers to Hong Kong. Of course, the aim is really to stop this new virus strain from coming to Hong Kong.
Australia, meanwhile, will not join the growing list of nations banning British travelers, according to their officials on Monday, expressing doubts that the UK's latest infection surge was solely due to a new coronavirus strain. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Australia, which still shares a monarch with its former colonial power, was confident existing 14-day quarantine rules for arriving travelers were sufficient to handle the threat. A slew of allies have moved to block planes, trains, and vessels arriving from Britain as London warned the spread of a new, seemingly more infectious virus strain had surged out of control. Australia's acting chief medical officer Paul Kelly insisted people arriving from Britain were no risk to the Australian public because, like almost everyone, they must undergo 14-day strict quarantine when entering the country. Australian health authorities say they have already detected the British strain in quarantined travelers, but those cases are not said to be linked to a cluster of 83 cases in Sydney, which has ended Australia's weeks-long run of no community transmission. Authorities have responded with record levels of testing as well as intense contact tracing efforts, local lockdowns, and reimposed restrictions on mass gatherings. Sydney residents have been barred from most of the rest of the country as a precaution.
U.S. authorities are looking very carefully into the virus variant spreading in the United Kingdom, top health officials said Sunday, while indicating that a ban on UK travel was not currently in the cards. The news came as a U.S. expert panel recommended those aged 75 and older should be the next vaccinated against the virus, along with 30 million frontline essential workers, including teachers, grocery store employees, and police. Addressing the virus variant, the chief advisor to the government's Operation Warp Speed vaccine program told CNN's State of the Nation that U.S. officials do not know yet if it is present in the country. We are, of course, looking very carefully into this, including at the National Institutes of Health and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, he said. At the moment, he said no strain of the virus appears to be resistant to the vaccines available.
And to Thailand now, where the country has begun its COVID testing after the biggest ever surge in cases linked to an outbreak at its seafood market. Joining us live from Bangkok, here's Crystal Mapa. Hello, Crystal.
Hi, Alma and CJ. Thailand will test more than 10,000 people for coronavirus after an outbreak linked to its biggest seafood market, officials said on Sunday. Hundreds of infections have been linked to Mahachai Market and Port since a 67-year-old female prawn seller tested positive on Thursday. Most cases among migrant workers from neighboring Myanmar. Authorities have ordered Myanmar workers around the market not to leave their residences. By Sunday, officials had confirmed 689 cases linked to Mahachai. Thailand has so far managed to contain COVID-19, recording fewer than 5,300 cases and a total of 60 deaths since the start of the pandemic. Alma, life in the country has mostly returned to normal, although strict entry restrictions have brought the tourism industry, which is crucial to the economy, to a halt. Over recent weeks, a separate, smaller cluster of cases has emerged, linked to people traveling unofficially over the porous border with Myanmar. So now, Alma, anyone entering Thailand is required to quarantine in designated facilities for 14 days and undergo multiple COVID-19 tests. Thailand is the latest country to record an outbreak among migrant worker communities. Earlier this year, the virus spread rapidly within overcrowded migrant worker dormitories in Singapore, while more recently, Malaysia has struggled to control outbreak among migrants who are employed in its medical glove facilities. Workers in the Malaysian glove factories who have toiled for long hours to supply protective gloves to countries around the world had earlier complained about a lack of social distancing. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Crystal, this is surely bad news now that we're going into the holidays. Can you tell us if the government is implementing more anti-COVID measures aside from the measures already in place?
Indeed, Alma, measures have been stepped up in the capital. Schools in 3 districts of Bangkok that border Samut Sakhon province have been shut until 4th of January. Across Bangkok, companies have been urged to allow staff to work from home where possible. The public has been advised to avoid large gatherings as well. Stricter rules have been introduced for the new year, with organizers of celebrations told to seek official permission to hold gatherings. Moreover, Alma, Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, or BMA, has canceled countdown events and the chanting of prayers on New Year's Eve. Entertainment venues and restaurants have been reminded to observe social distancing. Limits have been placed on the number of fans able to attend boxing matches. Alma?
All right. So we look forward to more updates there in Thailand as we follow this developing story at that outbreak in the seafood market. Thank you for your time. Stay safe and stay alert. Thank you.
Likewise, Alma. I am Crystal Mapa reporting from Bangkok, Thailand. We live in interesting times.
Now, South Korea banned the gatherings of more than 4 people in the capital and surrounding areas as the country recorded its highest daily coronavirus death toll since the pandemic began. While South Korea has suffered relatively lightly compared to other nations, officials said a surge in infections had left hospitals in the capital region with a chronic shortage of intensive care beds. The country reported 926 new coronavirus cases on Monday, and the death toll was now at 698 after 24 people died in the past 24 hours, a record high since the emergence of the epidemic. South Korea had previously been held up as a model of how to combat the virus, with the public largely following social distancing and other rules. But a resurgence centered on the capital and surrounding areas has seen daily cases climb to over 1,000 several times in the past week. Acting Mayor Seo Jong-hyuk said there were only 4 empty beds left in intensive care units in Seoul. At least 2 Seoul residents died of the disease while waiting to be hospitalized this month, according to city authorities. Starting from Wednesday, Seoul and surrounding regions will ban most gatherings of 5 people or more for about 2 weeks.
And back here in the Philippines, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. said the country has been assured of 30 million dosages of the Indian-made Novavax coronavirus vaccine, now which would boost the government's efforts to secure vaccine supplies for more than 100 million Filipinos. In a television interview, Mr. Locsin said the Novavax may be expected to be available in July of 2021. The SII produces Covavax, Novavax, AstraZeneca, AZ-1222, and an anti-cancer drug that can also be used to contain COVID-19. Through a tripartite agreement the government has signed with the private sector, the country has secured 2.6 million doses of a coronavirus vaccine developed by British, Swedish, multinational pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. The government also plans to buy 25 million doses of a vaccine from China's Sinovac Biotech, which will be delivered in March 2021. Negotiations with Moderna and Arcturus Therapeutics Holdings to secure 4 million to 25 million doses of vaccines will begin next week.
Now in Russia, they reported a new record increase in coronavirus infections as some experts said the pandemic had hit the country harder than the government statistics suggest. Health officials reported 493 new virus deaths and 29,350 cases, bringing total infections to 2,877,727, the fourth highest in the world. Total fatalities stood at 51,351. Moscow and the second city of St. Petersburg were the hardest hit, recording 7,797 and 3,752 new cases each. Russia has reported a much lower death rate compared to other badly hit countries, raising concerns that authorities have downplayed the figures. Alexei Raksha, a former demographer at Russia's state statistics agency, said he believed around 250,000 people died from the coronavirus. Raksha, who left the Rosstat statistics agency in July, told AFP that the Russian Health Ministry and the Consumer Health Agency downplay and falsify coronavirus figures. Russia's second wave has surged in recent weeks, but officials have not reimposed a strict nationwide lockdown launched in the early days of the pandemic, and many Russians flout social distancing and mask-wearing rules. The pandemic has overwhelmed Russia's already underfunded hospitals, while many medicines used to treat the coronavirus have disappeared from pharmacies. A local doctor, speaking on condition of anonymity, said a great number of coronavirus patients were being hospitalized and were discharged before fully recovering to free up space. Russia is pinning its hopes on homemade vaccines, including the Sputnik V, named after the first satellite in space.
Meanwhile, the EU's drug regulator will decide on Monday whether to authorize the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine, with desperate countries hoping for the green light to finally start inoculating their citizens. The Amsterdam-based European Medicines Agency dramatically moved the decision on the jab ahead from December 29, following pressure to accelerate the process from Germany and other EU states. The clamor for action grew as Britain and the U.S. have already started giving their citizens the vaccine developed by U.S. giant Pfizer and German firm BioNTech under emergency national rules. The EU will start COVID-19 inoculations on December 27, providing the EMA grants a one-year conditional marketing authorization, according to the European Commission. The regulator said it had worked around the clock to speed things up, but needed to make sure the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine was safe and effective in order to avoid any doubts that could affect uptake.
Now, a major Tokyo shrine said Monday it would close its doors on New Year's Eve for the first time in decades as religious sites in Japan adapt year-end events amid record coronavirus infections. Temple and shrine visits are an integral part of New Year celebrations in Japan, the country's most important holiday, with flashy fireworks and rowdy parties less common. This year, the shrine, among the most significant Shinto sanctuaries in Japan, will close its doors over New Year's for the first time since the end of the Second World War. The move comes as Japan battles a third wave of coronavirus infections with record numbers of new daily cases in recent weeks. In Tokyo, the governor has asked people to stay home over the holiday, and city railway and subway operators are scrapping the New Year's Eve all-night service in an effort to limit crowds.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. President Duterte will not protect police Senior Master Sergeant Jonel Nuesca, the police officer who killed a mother and her son in Tarlac, according to Malacanang Today. A video that went viral on social media showed Nuesca, 46, who's assigned at the crime laboratory base in Parañaque City, killing Sonia Gregorio, 52 years old, and her son Frank Anthony, 25, during an altercation in Paniqui Town on Sunday. In a press briefing from Davao City, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque vowed justice for the mother and her son. He also acknowledged that there are a few bad eggs in the police force. Take a look.
Kinokondena po natin yan nangyari dyan sa Tarlac, no? At lilinawin ko lang po, hindi po ito service-related na double murder, no? Ito po ay, kung hindi tayo nagkakamali, ay isang away daw, no? Tungkol sa pagposisyon sa lupa. So ang pulis pong yan ay hindi po pwedeng mag-invoke ng kahit anong depensa na may kinalaman sa kanyang katungkulin ang kanilang ang pagpatay na yan. At ito po ay tatratuhin ordinaryong murder cases, no? At iimbestigahan, kakasuhan, lilitisin at papaparusahan po natin yung pulis na yan. No ifs, no buts. Magkakaroon po ng katarungan dahil nakita naman po natin ang ebidensya ng pangyayari. Hindi po yan po protektahan ng presidente, kinokondena po natin yan. Bakit po protektahan ng presidente yan? Hindi naman po yan service related, no? Yan po ay pribadong bagay, no? Nagkataon lang pulis siya, pero kinakailangan siyang managot. Isang bugok lang po yung pulis na yan, no? Hindi naman po lahat ng pulis ay gaya niya. Siyempre po, ang barel ay para sa proteksyon ng ating mga kapulisan. Hindi po yan para gamitin laban sa kanilang mga personal na mga kaaway.
Second question niya, does the palace believe that
in any way,
Tarlac shooting
policy cannot be formulated on the basis of aberrations, no? Talagang exception po ang mga bugok sa kapulisan. By and large po, matindi po ang disiplina naman ng ating mga kapulisan.
Now, reports show that the shooting happened when Nuesca's daughter figured in an argument with the elder Gregorio. The police sergeant appeared to get annoyed when the older Gregorio yelled at his daughter. And a few moments later, the cop shot her in the head at close range and did the same to her son. Meanwhile, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara said he was disturbed by the death of the victims, which resulted from such an altercation, and he assured a swift investigation of the case to bring justice to the victims. Nuesca continued to shoot Sonia in the head even after she fell to the ground. Now, he surrendered at 6:19 p.m. on Sunday, more than an hour after the shooting. He was later taken into custody by personnel of the Paniqui Police.
Now, within less than 3 years since its last eruption in 2018, Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island is once again showing signs of increased activity, resulting in a 4.4 magnitude earthquake and an aviation code red, which is a warning for aviators to avoid the area. But thankfully, there is no tsunami threat. Alfred Asenas from our Hawaii Bureau has more on this breaking news story.
This is the latest on the new eruption that's taking place as we speak on Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island, the same volcano that erupted back in 2018 between May and September. As of Sunday, December 20 at 10:36 p.m. Hawaii time, which would be 4:36 p.m. Philippine time, the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, HVO, under the U.S. Geological Survey, recorded a magnitude 4.4 earthquake located beneath Kilauea volcano's south flank. The earthquake was centered within Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where the volcano is obviously located. And there's a map showing its location on the HVO website where these tremors have happened in the last several hours. So this is the actual website that HVO is referring to, and you can see a whole lot of seismic activity happening along the south flank of Big Island. And here is the results showing the different times that tremors have taken place, to include the 4.4 that took place at 10:36 p.m. Now, there has been reports of weak to light shaking with intensity 4, which has been reported across the island of Hawaii. At that intensity, significant damage to buildings or structures is not expected. Scientist in charge David Philip mentioned that his team will continue to monitor Kilauea as the situation is rapidly evolving with this evening's eruption at its summit. Now, the south flank has been the site of over 30 earthquakes of 4.0 or greater in the last 20 years, obviously to include the ones in 2018. Most are caused by abrupt motion of the volcano's south flank, which moves to the southeast over the oceanic crust. Now, keep in mind that there are very small communities that line the coastline here, and what's significantly different about this eruption compared to the one in 2018 is that back in 2018, you have these villages of Pahoa, Leilani Estates, and thereabouts that are on the southeast, approximately from the crater. Now, according to authorities, the fallout of ash and some volcanic debris will be likely in places like Na'alehu and Ocean View, this time on the southwest corner of Big Island. So authorities are asking everyone stay indoors to avoid ash and intense heat. And thankfully, there is no reports of a tsunami threat as a result of this 4.4 earthquake. And just to confirm what the scientific community has reported, Kai Kahele, who is the newly elected congressman who hails from Big Island, tweeted on Sunday night that his home in Hilo town is the big town that's located here. His home rocked a 4.4 magnitude earthquake, and he puts a little remark here. Just when you thought 2020 could not get any worse, now we have lava and embedded falling ash to deal with. Keeping in mind, of course, that to this day, you have residents who are still recovering, who are still rebuilding from the 2018 volcanic eruption. On top of that, Big Island, just like the rest of the world, is also dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is can be considered as the first major test for newly elected Mayor Mitch Roth, who got elected mayor of this Big Island back in November. That's the latest that we have regarding the ongoing eruption on Kilauea on Hawaii's Big Island. Reporting from Honolulu, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thanks, Alfred. At least 8 people were killed during the onslaught of Tropical Depression Vicky in Mindanao and the Visayas during the weekend, according to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Now, the nearly 10,000 people were evacuated from their homes in the northeastern Philippines as heavy rain across the country left at least 8 people dead, according to authorities. The storm, which has inundated villages and destroyed scores of houses in recent days, is the latest to batter the disaster-prone archipelago. Floodwaters reached waist deep in 14 towns in the Cagayan Valley in the northeast of the main island of Luzon, which saw the worst flooding in decades last month, according to Regional Civil Defense Officer Francis Joseph Reyes. Now, that forced nearly 10,000 people to seek shelter in emergency centers. The rain, which was intensified by the northeast monsoon, has filled Magat Dam near to its critical level, and the release of water threatens to aggravate the flooding, according to Reyes. Authorities said at least 6 people drowned in 2 provinces on the major southern island of Mindanao, which was also hit by torrential rain in recent days. 2 elderly women were also killed in a rain-induced landslide last Saturday.
In other news, the Kremlin on Monday denied any role in recent cyber attacks on the United States, saying American accusations that Russia was behind a major security breach lacked evidence. U.S. lawmakers over the weekend urged a tough response to a huge cyber attack on government agencies and criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's unwillingness to point the finger at Russia, which has been widely blamed for the hack. President Vladimir Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said public debate in Washington about the breaches has nothing to do with the U.S. Russia is not involved in these attacks, Peskov told reporters on Monday. The attackers managed to breach computer networks using enterprise management network software made by the Texas-based IT company SolarWinds. U.S. government agencies, including the Treasury, were among those reportedly affected, but it also hit targets worldwide, with the list of victims still emerging, according to researchers. Eagle News International will be right back. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Canreeve Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mga mahalagang pangyayari na naganap di lamang sa bansa, kundi maging sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, ating balikan sa Pilipinas 2020. Tinutukan ng Eagle News Team sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa, pati na sa ibayong dagat. Pilipinas 2020. Hatid sa inyo ng Net25, Radyo Agila, EagleNews.ph at ng Eagle News Live. Pilipinas 2020. Abangan!
In business news, European stocks, oil prices, and the pound dived Monday as a new highly infectious strain of coronavirus found in Britain sent traders running for cover. Sterling lost 2.3% against the dollar, hit additionally after Britain and the EU failed again to reach a post-Brexit trade deal. The euro jumped 1.4% against the pound. Oil prices plunged 6%, while shares in travel companies fell by similar amounts. In late morning deals, London's benchmark FTSE 100 index was down 2.4%. Leading Eurozone markets shed more than 3%. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was chairing a crisis meeting on Monday as a growing number of countries blocked flights from Britain over a new highly infectious coronavirus strain the UK said was out of control.
Long tailback snake into the port of Dover on England's south coast for another day, with lorries crawling along at walking pace for miles. With the end of the Brexit transition approaching without the guarantee of a deal, many companies are stockpiling, particularly those involved in industrial and food production, causing disruption at ports. Watch this.
U.S. lawmakers agreed on a nearly $900 million COVID-19 relief package for millions of Americans on Sunday in a deal that follows months of wrangling and comes as the nation battles the world's largest COVID outbreak. Talks had taken place amid a highly contentious campaign for the U.S. presidency and Donald Trump's subsequent refusal to concede defeat to Democrat Joe Biden. Let's listen in.
We can finally report what our nation has needed to hear for a very long time. More help is on the way. Moments ago, in consultation with our committees, the 4 leaders of the Senate and the House finalized an agreement. There will be another major rescue package for the American people.
We all are ready to deliver a desperately needed extension of enhanced unemployment benefits, direct survival checks to millions of American families, and crucial relief to our schools, our small businesses, our healthcare system, and funding to support the production and distribution of a vaccine.
The package includes aid for vaccine distribution and logistics, extra jobless benefits for $300 per week, and a new round of $600 stimulus checks, half the amount provided in checks distributed in March under the CARES Act. The agreement also contains $25 billion in housing aid to prevent evictions and nearly $100 billion to help schools and child care facilities reopen. As the pandemic takes a record toll in U.S. cases and deaths, the economy has been greatly battered, with jobless numbers rising in the past 2 weeks.
When the coronavirus pandemic shuttered restaurants in California, Aleida Ramirez lost her job as a waitress, plunging her, along with many other single mothers, into a vicious cycle of poverty, unpaid bills, and reliance on food banks. Marisol Gonzalez and Maria Lara have faced similar struggles on the other side of the country in New York and Washington. The pandemic has been particularly hard on women who work in the service sector, which has been crippled by the economic crisis.
At the beginning, I was okay, like the month of August and September. And then October came in and I was like, I can't, I have to choose what do I cover? Is it food or rent?
Pues como madre soltera que soy, me he sentido fatal, me he sentido casi morirme porque no tengo los alimentos para mis hijos.
Yo tengo 7 meses de venir a buscar ayuda de alimentos porque perdí mi trabajo a causa de la pandemia y pues esto me ayuda mucho.
De primero yo trabajaba de housekeeping, cerraron los trabajos en el hotel, luego pues nos quedamos sin trabajo. De allí yo traté, me rebusqué y ya encontré un trabajito en construcción. Me dan 2 días, 3 días, 4 días al 15, y así, con eso es lo que yo voy viviendo.
Tenemos que pagar la renta, luz, gas, teléfono y comprar Metrocar para tomar el tren y el autobús.
Japan's cabinet on Monday approved a record budget proposal for the next fiscal year from April, including stimulus for the pandemic-hit economy and another hike in defense spending to counter China. The budget proposal totals 106.6 trillion yen, a 3.8% rise from the current year and the 9th straight annual increase. Once again, the government is seeking a record defense budget for the 7th year running, this time of 5.3 trillion yen, up 0.5% from fiscal 2020 as Japan faces threats from an assertive China and unpredictable North Korea. Among the key items of military spending are 57.6 billion yen to develop a next-generation fighter and 33.5 billion yen for the development of a new missile. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato said, quote, "We will strengthen the capacity necessary for national defense in order to keep pace with the security environment, which is becoming increasingly tough. The overall budget reflects the long shadow cast by the coronavirus pandemic and the growing cost of supporting the country's aging population, with social welfare and pension programs estimated to cost 35.8 trillion yen.
And the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn is set to happen before sunset on December 21st, according to Pagasa. Now, according to Pagasa, Administrator Vicente Malano, a conjunction occurs when planets appear close to one another as they line up with Earth in their respective orbits. Great conjunctions are called great, as they are the rarest, brightest, and closest on the average of conjunction among planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, according to him. The great conjunction on Monday will appear 6 arc minutes apart. The orbital paths of the two huge planets ensure great conjunctions every 20 years. But many are impossible to see with the naked eye because they happen during the daytime. Others are less impressive events as the planets don't come very close together. But this year's will be the closest conjunction since 1623, the year Shakespeare's collected works were first published. Another added trivia. The last great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn occurred on July 16, 1623. Now, after December 21, this will be seen again on March 15, 2080.
60 years away. We gotta see that now.
I don't think I'd still be alive.
Yeah, we're not sure. So
well, we never know.
We see that now. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. Join us again, please, tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.